My name's Rachel, and cars have been my heartbeat since I was 7, since the day my dad slid a wrench into my tiny grease-free hand and said, "Let's build something together." While other kids were chasing soccer balls or trading Pokemon cards, I was elbow deep in engine bays next to my father in the dim glow of our Detroit garage lights. To us, cars weren't just machines. They were memory capsules, time travelers with exhaust pipes. My dad, Mike, had this uncanny ability to diagnose an engine by sound alone. He used to joke, "Forget stethoscopes, I listen to horsepower." But if you asked him his ultimate dream, a 1967 Shelby Cobra, Guardsman blue with white racing stripes. That car lived on a faded poster above his workbench for as long as I can remember. Every time he glanced at it, he'd whisper, "Someday." But someday never came. Pancreatic cancer stole him from me when I was 22, just months after I earned my degree in automotive engineering. I buried him with his favorite wrench in his hand. And right then, standing at his memorial, I made a vow. I would find that cobra, I would restore it with my own hands, and I'd finish the dream he never got to start. I met Josh at a classic car show in Ann Arbor. He wasn't like the usual crowd of guys who showed up for the gloss and glory shots. He asked real questions about compression ratios, original paint codes, gear ratios. It caught me off guard. Most men I met at shows were either trying to impress me with surface-level knowledge or seemed surprised a woman could name all 4 strokes of an engine cycle without blinking. But not Josh. He listened, really listened. And when he invited me out for coffee after the show, I said yes, even though I usually didn't. We clicked. He worked in marketing, but he respected my restoration work like it was art. On our third date, I caught myself daydreaming about what it might feel like to share a garage with someone, to have a partner who didn't just accept my passion, but shared in it. He once told me, "You're not like anyone I've ever dated. You don't pretend. You live and breathe this stuff." And I love that. It felt like love. So when he introduced me to his mom, Patricia, I wanted it to go well. I even wore a skirt instead of my usual jeans, stupid in hindsight. We were barely 10 minutes into Sunday dinner when she started rapid-firing questions at me like a job interview I hadn't signed up for. "Do you cook every night? When do you plan on having children?" Then with a smile as tight as her hairspray. "Cars are such a greasy hobby for a young lady, aren't they?" I laughed awkwardly, tried to brush it off. Josh gave me a quick smile across the table but said nothing. That should have been my first warning. I told myself it was nerves. First meetings are awkward. She was old school, probably didn't mean anything by it. So I let it slide. I shouldn't have. 14 months later, Josh and I got married. It was a small wedding, intimate and simple. Patricia gifted us a set of ornate crystal serving trays and a handwritten note suggesting that perhaps now is a good time to focus on making a beautiful home. I tucked the trays into a box in our storage closet and tried not to take it personally. Life was good at first. My small restoration business picked up steam, and Josh's career was going strong. We bought a modest home with a 2-car garage, and the first thing I did was upgrade the space with lifts, air tools, and a full mechanics bench. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Patricia visited monthly, always armed with passive-aggressive commentary. "Oh, the smell of gasoline always reminds me of a truck stop. Still working out there? I thought maybe you'd grown out of that phase. Josh deserves a quiet home, not an auto shop next to the kitchen." I smiled, nodded, bit my tongue. Again. Josh would chuckle uncomfortably, but never stepped in. He wasn't cruel, just conflict-averse. And for a long time, I mistook that for balance. I figured if I could just be patient, she'd come around. She didn't. When Josh was laid off due to company cutbacks, our finances tightened fast. We held out as long as we could, but when the bills started to stack up, he suggested moving in with Patricia temporarily. "It's just a few months," he said, "until I find something solid again. She has 4 bedrooms, it makes sense." What made me agree wasn't the house or the money. It was what happened 2 days before we moved. I found the rusted shell of a 1967 Shelby Cobra in a neighbor's barn, the exact model my dad had always dreamed of. "Mr. Caldwell said I could have it if I just hauled it out." "Better you fix it than I pay to trash it," he said. I felt like fate had opened a door. So I towed the car to Patricia's oversized garage and started what would become the most important restoration of my life. She hated it. "You're bringing that death trap here." She sneered, wrinkling her nose like the car itself smelled of sin. It's worth hundreds of thousands once restored, I explained. If you believe that she scoffed, I've got a bridge to sell you. From that moment, it was a cold war. Every day, a new passive jab. Every week, a fresh remark designed to chip away at my resolve. Shouldn't you be looking for real work? That thing stinks up the whole house. No wonder you can't afford your own place. Josh still didn't speak up, not really. He'd say she means well or just ignore her. Like that was a strategy instead of avoidance. Meanwhile, the tension tightened like a lug nut cranked past torque spec. But I didn't stop. I poured everything I had into that car money sweat grief. The garage became my sanctuary, the one space Patricia couldn't touch. Every bolt I tightened felt like I was bolting my heart back together. Every panel I restored was another piece of Dad coming back to life. I thought if I could just finish it, everything would make sense. But I didn't know then that finishing the car wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the real betrayal. I'll never forget the moment it happened, because nothing was ever the same after that. It was a Thursday. I had left early for the garage, excited to finish a final tuning job on a vintage Corvette. The Cobra was finally complete, fully restored, gleaming with its original Guardsman blue paint and white racing stripes. It was beautiful, breathtaking. The kind of car that stops time. And it wasn't just a car, it was my father's dream made real, a 427 V8 heartbeat, pulled back from the dead by my own hands. After 18 months of restoration documentation and love, it was finally perfect. I had even taken it to a local car show 2 weeks earlier, just to feel the community buzz around it. It won Best in Show and Most Authentic Restoration. A collector, Roger Daniels, offered me a cashier's check for $280,000 on the spot. Add $20K if you deliver it next weekend, he'd said, eyes hungry. I declined. That car wasn't for sale. It wasn't about the money. So when my phone buzzed at 11:03 a.m. with a message from an unknown number that read, "Just left with the Cobra. Lady said you might have more parts in storage. Let me know when I can pick them up." Everything inside me went cold. I texted back instantly, hands shaking, "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number. That car isn't for sale." The reply came fast. "No mistake. Older woman at the house said she was your mother-in-law. Said you and your husband agreed to sell it for something more practical. Paid cash." I stopped breathing. For a second, the whole world blurred. My heart pounded like a misfiring engine. I called Josh, straight to voicemail, called again, nothing. I grabbed my keys, told my boss it was an emergency, and peeled out of the parking lot like the asphalt was on fire. The drive back felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. I kept telling myself it couldn't be true, that there was some explanation. Maybe she just moved it. Maybe Josh did something stupid and didn't tell me. But as I turned into Patricia's driveway, I saw the unfamiliar truck bed loaded with car parts. My car parts. I ran inside, heart slamming in my chest, and there she was sitting at the kitchen table counting $100 bills like she just won the lottery. "Oh, Rachel," she said brightly. Not even looking up. "You're home early. I took care of that car situation. $15,000, cash." He was thrilled. My mouth was dry. "Where's my car? I sold it." She said like she was telling me she'd picked up milk from the store. "Honestly, you needed something more sensible. That thing wasn't even running right." I just stared at her, speechless. That car, I managed to whisper, was worth $300,000. She laughed, actually laughed. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. No old car is worth that kind of money, especially one sitting in my garage collecting dust." I nearly collapsed. My hands were trembling. My voice cracked as I asked, "Did you give him the documents?" "The binder in the trunk," she shrugged. "There was some paperwork, an old notebook. I told him it was all included. The authentication papers, my restoration journal, the original factory parts, and my dad's vintage Rolex I'd hidden in a custom compartment in the trunk. All gone. I locked myself in the bathroom before I completely fell apart. My knees buckled. My breath came in shallow bursts. It wasn't just a car, it was everything. My tribute, my craft, my grief, my healing, my history. Gone. When I finally emerged, Josh was home. He walked into chaos wide-eyed and confused. Patricia looked proud. "I sold the Cobra," she announced like a game show host. 15,000. "Now you two can buy something useful." Josh blinked. "You what?" She didn't ask. I said, Voice flat cold. She just did it. She meant well, Josh mumbled like he always did, but even he couldn't hold the line this time. I showed him the collector's offer letter, the appraisal, the photos, the award from the show. You said this car was sentimental, he whispered. I didn't realize it was this valuable. I snapped. I've been telling you both for months. You never listened. Patricia, unbothered, stood by her decision. It was in my garage, taking up my space, and I paid you rent for that space. I shot back. You had no right. She rolled her eyes. You're being dramatic. That word dramatic was the final nail. I felt it. Something inside me snapped so loud I swear the walls could hear it. I didn't scream. I didn't sob. I just looked at Josh, calm as steel. I'm leaving, he panicked. Where will you go? Anywhere that's not here. And as I walked out that door with nothing but my keys and my dignity, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was theft of a car, of a dream, of a piece of me. And I wasn't going to let it end like this. I didn't cry on the way to Sophia's house. Not in the car, not in her driveway, not even as I hauled my overnight bag out of the back seat with shaking hands. But the second her front door opened and I saw her face, calm, kind, completely shocked, I fell apart in her arms. She sold it, I choked. She sold my father's car. Sophia didn't ask questions. She just said, come in, and shut the door behind us like she was locking out a storm. That night in her guest room, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender and old books, I opened my laptop and went to war. Because here's the thing, I wasn't raised to collapse. My dad taught me how to fix what's broken, and this was broken. Not just the car, not just my heart. The trust, the lines that should never be crossed, the whole framework of my marriage, my autonomy, my right to say, this is mine. So I did what any daughter of a mechanic would do. I made a checklist. First, I called Roger, the buyer. He didn't answer the first time, or the second. But on the third call, he picked up. His voice was cautious. Look, lady, he said, I bought that car fair and square from the homeowner. She had the keys and everything. Said her son and daughter-in-law were selling it. She's not the homeowner, I replied. She's my mother-in-law, and that car was registered in my name. She had no right. A pause. Well, I already started disassembling it. Engines on the hoist. My stomach dropped. You're tearing it apart. He sighed. The engine alone is worth more than I paid. Honestly, if it was worth $300,000, you wouldn't have kept it in a suburban garage. I have photos, appraisals, documentation. Sorry, he said, not unkindly, but that's business. He hung up, and that was when the grief turned to fire. I contacted every car forum I'd ever posted in, dropped the story with VIN number restoration records and every receipt I had. Within hours, I had a flood of messages from restorers, collectors, judges, even attorneys. One message stood out. Marcus Jefferson, the head judge from the show, where the Cobra had won, offered to write a formal statement verifying its authenticity and estimated market value. This is a significant loss, he wrote. Not just financially, but historically. I printed it out, highlighted every word. The next morning, Sophia's cousin Travis, a sharp, soft-spoken property lawyer, met me for coffee. After hearing my story and skimming the evidence, he looked up from his notes. This isn't just emotional, he said. It's theft, unauthorized sale of personal property. And if she included your documents, it borders on fraud. What do I need to prove ownership, value, and that she knew it wasn't hers to sell? I've got registration, the appraisal, and photos of every stage of the rebuild, plus a signed offer from a collector. Travis smiled. That's more than most clients ever bring in. Then I told him about the hidden security camera I had installed in Patricia's garage 2 weeks earlier after she scratched the Cobra and blamed it on tight parking. That footage could be everything, he said. That afternoon, I went back to the house while Patricia was at Bridge Club. Josh answered the door. He looked tired, scared, guilty. I need to know, I said. Did you know she was going to sell it? He shook his head. I swear to you I didn't. I believed him. But that wasn't enough anymore. I found her journal, I said, in her study drawer, handwritten entries that read like premeditated sabotage. April 3rd. Jay won't confront her. I'll handle the car myself. April 10th. Buyer won't commit unless Amanda is present. Need another approach. April 28th. Told Roger $15,000 cash. She'll be gone. He'll be gone. Once it's done, they'll have to accept it. I showed Josh the pages, watched the color drain from his face. I had no idea. I know, I said, but your silence helped build this, and now we both have to live in the wreckage. Travis drafted a formal demand for restitution $241,000 in damages accounting for the lost provenance damage and diminished restoration value. Patricia had significant assets, home equity investments, and she'd left a paper trail too arrogant to hide. But we didn't just want money, we wanted accountability. So the next day, when Patricia walked into her kitchen and saw me, Josh, and Travis waiting with the Cobra's disassembled body parts in crates behind us, she paled. "What's this?" she said. "A legal conversation," I replied, "and a reckoning," she blustered. Denied, played victim, claimed she was helping us. But Travis laid out every document, every photo, every journal page in her own handwriting. By the end, all she could whisper was, "I didn't know it was worth that much." "It doesn't matter," I said. "It wasn't yours." We gave her 48 hours to accept the terms or face a lawsuit. And for the first time, Patricia, queen of manipulation, expert in control, looked small. Because she finally realized she had underestimated the one person she couldn't bend: me. The Cobra was never going to be the same. By the time Roger returned the parts he hadn't sold off, the damage was done. The body was separated from the chassis. The frame was bent. The restoration journal, my documentation of every detail, was smudged and torn. The authentication papers were stained with oil. My dad's vintage Rolex miraculously was still in the hidden compartment, untouched but no longer where it belonged. I stood in the garage of our new apartment, staring at crates filled with pieces of what had once been a masterpiece. My masterpiece. It looked like failure, but I knew better. This wasn't the end. This was the foundation of something new. The legal settlement gave me some financial breathing room. Patricia agreed, under very real legal pressure, to pay $175,000 in damages. Combined with the recovered Cobra components, it was enough to consider rebuilding. Not the car, but myself. Josh and I moved out the same week. Our apartment wasn't glamorous. The garage barely had room for two people to stand without bumping into each other. But it was ours. Quiet, untouched by Patricia's commentary, her manipulation, her need to control every inch of my life. For the first time in years, I could breathe. We set boundaries immediately. No visits from his mother. No conversations about fixing things until I saw actual change. No more excuses. Josh, to his credit, started therapy. I didn't realize how much of my life I spent trying to avoid conflict, he told me one night over Chinese takeout. Even when it meant sacrificing you. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. As for me, I made a decision. I wasn't going to try to resurrect the Cobra the way it was. Too many pieces were missing physically, emotionally. Instead, I used the parts and settlement money to start something I dreamed of for years. Blake Vintage Restorations. A real shop. My own name on the door. A place where cars came to be reborn, where craftsmanship mattered more than gloss, and where stories mattered as much as speed. I leased a modest industrial space and filled it with the same tools my father had left me. The Cobra's engine sat in the front office, polished and mounted on a custom stand like a war trophy, or maybe a gravestone. Either way, it meant something. The restoration community I'd leaned on during the legal battle came through again. Collectors sent referrals. Enthusiasts offered projects. Marcus Jefferson, the same judge who'd awarded the Cobra Best in Show, became a mentor and later a business partner. "What happened to your car was a tragedy," he said. "But your skills, your passion, those can't be taken from you, and they're what make you dangerous in a good way." I didn't just restore cars, I restored myself. I started speaking at events, especially to young women who were told, like I was, that passion had an expiration date, that they should pick something cleaner, easier, more ladylike. I told them my story not as a victim, but as proof you can reclaim what someone tried to take from you. Not everything is repairable, but you are. Even Patricia eventually began to see it. At a carefully neutral holiday lunch restaurant, public 1 hour max, she looked across the table, pushed a bread plate aside, and said, "I still don't understand why anyone would care so much about an old car. But I had no right to make that decision for you. What I did was wrong. I'm sorry, it wasn't perfect." but it was the closest thing to real accountability I'd heard from her in 3 years. I nodded. Thank you for recognizing that. Forgiveness, I've learned, isn't a switch, it's a boundary. One that lets healing in but keeps repeated harm out. 6 months after the betrayal, my business was thriving. Josh was finally standing on his own. We still had work to do. Marriage is a restoration project of its own, but at least we were speaking honestly. I had changed. I wasn't the girl who smiled through insults anymore. I wasn't the woman who accepted. She means well as an excuse for disrespect. I had built something real with my own hands, and this time, no one was taking it from me. One afternoon, Mr. Caldwell, the elderly neighbor who'd first given me the cobra shell, showed up at the shop with a dusty folder in hand. Found these while clearing out more of the barn, he said. Thought you'd want them. Inside were the original factory build sheets for the Shelby Cobra, documents more rare than gold, papers that proved the car's origins down to the last bolt. I laughed, I cried, I hugged him like he'd just brought my father back for a visit. Those papers didn't fix the past, but they reminded me of something my dad once told me, hands covered in grease eyes shining over a disassembled engine. You can't always prevent things from breaking, but you can learn how to rebuild, and I had. The Cobra was gone, but its story wasn't over. In the months that followed the legal battle, the betrayal, and the move, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't just mourning the loss of a car. I was mourning the part of myself I had silenced for years. The version of me who tiptoed around other people's comfort, who swallowed her voice to keep the peace, who allowed disrespect to wear the mask of tradition or family duty. That woman had been dismantled piece by piece under Patricia's roof. But standing in my new garage with my name on the business with the Cobra's engine gleaming like a defiant trophy, I understood something Dad had tried to teach me long ago. Some things can't be restored to what they were, but they can become something even stronger. Josh and I rebuilt slowly, carefully. Therapy helped. So did honest conversations, the kind that weren't about fixing what was broken between us, but about understanding why it broke in the first place. He stopped minimizing. I stopped apologizing for drawing lines. We weren't perfect. We never would be. But now we were real. Patricia, to her credit, began taking accountability in small, clumsy steps. The apology at the restaurant hadn't changed everything, but it cracked open a door I thought was welded shut. I didn't get it. She said once, "But that doesn't excuse what I did. I'm trying to do better." It wasn't an erasure of the past, but it was a start, and that's all healing ever really is, a start. Blake Vintage Restorations continued to grow. Word spread quickly, partly because of my reputation and partly because of the story. Car people are storytellers at heart. They know that every engine has a history. Every dent has meaning. Every rebuild has something sacred behind it. I didn't just restore cars, I restored legacies. And eventually, I created something that went beyond my own. Using the settlement money and the recovered components, I designed a custom exhibit called Value Beyond Price. It traveled across car museums and collector events around the country, showcasing the Cobra's remains, the documentation, the photos of its full glory, and the hard truth of how quickly something precious can be lost when people don't understand its worth. At the center of the display was my father's watch set, beside the faded poster that once hung above his workbench. Some visitors wept, others asked questions. Many simply stood silently, hands in pockets, hearts stirred. That exhibit wasn't about revenge, it was about remembrance. It was a reminder that worth isn't always measured in dollars. Sometimes it's in grease-stained journals and late-night work sessions. Sometimes it's in the fight to be heard. 1 year after the Cobra was sold, I returned to my father's grave. I brought a miniature model of the car painted Guardsman blue with Wimbledon white stripes and set it down beside fresh flowers. "It didn't turn out how I planned, Dad," I whispered. "But I think you'd be proud of what it became. Because the truth is, the Cobra wasn't the real legacy. I was. Everything he poured into me, his knowledge, his patience, his unshakable belief in doing the job right. That's what lived on. That's what couldn't be sold, dismantled, or thrown in the back of a stranger's truck." These days, when I look back, I don't just see what I lost. I see what I built in the aftermath. A business that reflects my values. Boundaries that protect my peace. A marriage that's no longer built on avoidance but accountability. And a voice that no longer waits for permission to be heard. I still get emotional sometimes when I see a Shelby Cobra out on the road. My chest tightens, my hands twitch. But it's not grief anymore, it's reverence. It's remembering that even the rarest things can be taken from us, and that's why we fight for them. That's why we restore. If you love this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us to bring you more heartwarming stories almost every day. Thank you for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next one.